Do you think the issue is the way that the animals are treated, or do you think the fact that they're killed at all?
Probably both. Like, I just don't, like, animals don't exist just to, like, for us to consume them. If they're going to be killed, at the very least kill them in a humane way. Not that any time killing them would be humane, but do you get what I mean? Like,
No, I totally get. No. Of course, I get it. Yeah, exactly. It is really challenging. So, hey, Ashley, it's nice to meet you. My name is Danesh.
So you too.
So yeah, I wanted to ask you a few questions about cruelty. And I wanted to get your opinion on them. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Awesome, cool. The first question I had was, what do you think cruelty is?
It's a hard one because it can be so many different things.
Yeah.
I don't want to minimalize it as in saying like bad treatment or something like that, because it's obviously like I would lean to more towards saying it's like something that's inhumane or that kind of thing.
You said inhumane. What does that mean to you? Like, what does inhumane mean? Or maybe what does humane mean?
Humane would be like at the very least like what someone deserves or what something deserves, the very bare minimum treatment if something's humane. And if it's inhumane, obviously you're not treating something or someone the way that they deserve to be treated, just as a human or as an animal or anything. Right.
Like we wouldn't, we would never like just go around kicking dogs.
No, yes. That would be cruel.
Right, exactly. That would be cruel. So the next question then would be, do you think that people are either categorically good and categorically bad, or do you think people fall somewhere in the spectrum?
I think it's 100% a spectrum. I think everyone has the ability to be bad.
Yeah.
Even the best people.
Yeah.
Like you can think you're a good person, but you still do things that you regret, or you don't think things through properly, or everyone has that capacity to do bad things, even if you don't want to admit it, or be honest with yourself that you do have that in you, and everyone does do bad things.
And do you think we sometimes unconsciously do bad things?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like, even if you think about, like, when you go out and you get drunk and you say something you don't mean, or, like, you say something without thinking through and all that kind of thing, like, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, but you're still doing something bad.
Yeah. If you found out that something you were doing was bad or not aligned with, like, your morals, do you think you're someone who would try to always improve and change that?
Yeah, I do think that, but then I also think it's easier said than done, especially when it's something that's really ingrained in what you do. Yeah. Like, it's hard to make big changes, like, but yeah, I think always trying to be a better person and do what you can to make the world a better place.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think a lot of us are like that. I don't think I've ever come across anybody who said, like, you know what, like, if I do bad things, like, I don't care, like, whatever. What's something really good they have in Australia that you love, like a candy?
Like Tim Tams?
Like Tim Tams. I don't know what those are, but...
Like a chocolate biscuit.
Okay, I'll look them up. So let's say you go into the store and there's Tim Tams, and you see that there's two brands of Tim Tams, and you find out that one of the brands of Tim Tams, you know, every time you buy it, like, a child gets hurt or something. But then there's the other one that's right next to it, and that doesn't happen. That's not the case. Would that alter your decision of the one that you choose to buy?
Yeah, for sure. Like, even if you think about, like, cage-free versus cage eggs, like, even though both of them aren't great, but you still choose... Well, I would always try and choose the better option. I know everyone else... Well, a lot of other people do as well.
Right. And so then that kind of goes into the next question. So what if it were, instead of a child being hurt, what if it were a dog being hurt? Would you also switch your decisions?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then I imagine this, like, same thing if it were a pig or like a chicken, like you said.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned, like, cage-free eggs, and you said that both are bad. Why do you say both are bad?
Well, obviously cage is worse, like, they're trapped in tiny little cages, but just because it's cage-free doesn't mean they're treated well, like, they're still shoved into a tiny space, and it's not like they're on a farm, like, roaming freely and with grass and everything. It's still pretty horrible conditions for them to be in, but yeah.
Do you eat animal products?
I'm not completely plant-based, but I try to limit it.
Why do you try to limit it?
Because I feel bad, I think.
Okay, yeah. If you feel bad about the decisions that you sometimes make, what's stopping you from going all the way?
It's hard. I live with my family as well, so we often have, like, all meals together, so it would be hard for me to just be like, okay, well, you guys all cook this and I'll cook, like, a separate meal. Like, I've always said, like, as soon as I move out, it would be a lot easier, and I would be able to do it a lot more. And even then, I basically only would ever eat meat in a day, like once a day, like at dinner, like. But yeah, that's mainly the only reason is that I still live at home and it's a lot harder.
And do you think even on the one instances that you do consume animal products or like meat, for example, would you consider that like a cruel action?
Yeah, I don't think it's great. I don't, and it's something that I've always had an issue with. Like growing up, I've always like said to like my mum and dad like that I don't want to think about it. Like I think that's another danger is that if a lot of people don't think about it, then they just ignore it and they feel fine with it, which is something that I do a lot as well. But I mean, yeah, everyone knows how cruel it is. It's just so ingrained in our world and in our society, and it's another thing that like food and the way that you eat is something that like you've grown up with, and it's like it's so hard to break that cycle like once you're in something that you're so used to.
Yeah. Do you think the issue is the way that the animals are treated, or do you think the fact that they're killed at all?
Probably both. I mean, yeah, like I just don't like animals don't exist just to like for us to consume them. But especially the way that they're treated, like if, like I said before, if they're going to be killed, at the very least kill them in a humane way, which we know for a fact that like not that any time killing them would be humane, but do you get what I mean? Like
no, I totally get. No, of course I get it. Yeah, exactly. It is really challenging. That's why I was kind of asking you about the humane part earlier, and I noticed you included animals in your definition, and I think that begs the question. I think you answered it yourself. Like, let me know if I understood you. Like, there really is no humane way to kill. If you hired a hitman to kill me, whose hands is my blood on? The hitman's or yours?
Both of us.
And then, do you think that when someone buys an animal product, like let's say like a chicken, who do you think the responsibility falls on? The consumer or like the whole supply chain?
The consumers are enabling the supply chain, but like without demand, there's no industry. So yeah, but the industry also then like it's like a cycle. Like
exactly.
The industry enables the consumer supports the industry. Like it's promoted and. Like it's just like a constant cycle, and it's on such a huge scale. Like how is it ever going to really be broken?
So I'm vegan, surprise. And so the question is, there's a lot of cycles I can't necessarily break, like by myself. Like I can't, end racism, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be racist.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that sort of thinking?
Yeah, 100%. And I think even like little things that everyone could do, and like I said, it's so hard to break like your habits. But like changing little things like only having meat once a day, like slowly getting into it and that kind of thing like makes it a lot easier. And also any small thing that you do still has a difference if everybody did it. Yeah. So yeah, it's like that end racism thing, like if you're not racist, someone else might be, but at least everyone isn't. Like it still gradually makes a difference.
Are you aware of the impact that animal agriculture has on the climate?
Yeah, that's another big reason that I can think about it as well, because originally like growing up it was just all about like the animal stuff alone was enough to make me uncomfortable with it, but then you think about that as well and it's just crazy. But then also you look at the environmental damage of like almond milk and making almond milk and stuff, and it's just like how do you win like in this situation? Like when it comes to the environment, it's like nothing we do, it's just
So it's actually interesting you bring up the almond milk thing, because this big study came out in 2018, an Oxford study, and it was the largest study ever conducted on animal agriculture and the environment. And it turns out that although almond milk does use way more milk than all the other milks, compared to cow's milk, it still uses 60% of the water. Yeah. So there's this whole propaganda about how bad, almonds are, but in reality, even the dairy is even worse. But you're right. Like if you want to be really conscious, then maybe you can always choose soy or oat or like all the other milks that we have. But yeah, like you said, the environment is just like another great reason to consider if the animals alone aren't enough. And so, do you think for you the goal would be to be vegan eventually?
Yeah, at the very least vegetarian. I think so, yeah. I think that would be something that I would be looking towards. And
why vegetarian and not vegan?
I don't know, it's just hard. Like when you think about like protein sources and stuff, and I know that there are a lot of good substitutes, but like I don't know, I love eating eggs, like as bad as it is, and like you love like making like real desserts and like that kind of thing, and it's just hard to think about. And like I know it's a completely selfish way of thinking, like you're putting what you want ahead of something that you still think isn't right. But it's hard. Like it's tricky.
It 100% is tricky. I mean, that's why we live in a non-vegan world after all. I want to go to the second thing you said. You said that you want to enjoy real desserts. Me and my mom, we've been going to amazing dessert places here in Paris, obviously the vegan ones. I just had the best cheesecake of my life, honestly, like this morning. So it was just an incredible thing. The place that I'm from, or that I live in Mexico, there's this one churro place. It's like one of the most famous ones in the country. Everyone's like, oh, you gotta go here, you gotta go here. The churros are vegan there. So once you start looking, you realize, oh, like there's actually a lot of different options.
Like you don't realize
I should have mentioned that. You know more than I do. And the second thing I was going to say, you mentioned like how you love eggs and how it's selfish. What do you think happens to those animals after they're no longer able to produce product?
Oh, nothing good. I mean, like it's like there's nothing good about any of it. Like I know that it's all so horrible.
Merci. Yeah, right. Like they're ultimately killed. All of them are killed. And even kind of thinking about it, do you think, like you even mentioned yourself, like animals aren't here for us to just use. Do you think there's something strange about, seeing another being and saying, I'm actually going to just take from you and use you as if you were coal or something?
For sure. I mean, but like it's so innate in human nature. Like you look like slavery, you look like the Holocaust.
Right.
All those things, and we look back on it now and go, how does that happen? Like, how does society get to that point? But back in that time, like that was just what it was, and like it's just so like indicative of humanity that we do behave that way and view people and things and animals like just as a resource. Even the way that, even with climate change, how the world is just completely like stripped and of all its resources.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And it's just like at the end of the day, like humans are just so selfish, like, and they'll just do whatever they want for their own gain as like individuals and as like society as a whole.
Do you think that's a good reason for us to not make changes?
No, not at all.
Yeah. You mentioned that you like the taste of the eggs and those products, and knowing that now these animals are ultimately killed, and that it's ultimately like a cycle of killing. Do you think taste is more valuable than the life of an animal?
No, I don't. When I look at it objectively, but it is still like I can say yes, I know that, but it's still just so tricky. Like I don't know how to explain it, because it's just like you do something bad. It's just like when you eat junk food, when you're trying to eat healthier, like objectively, like my goals are like if I want to like lose weight or like get fitter, like objectively those goals are more important to me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop you from going and eating the chocolate when you want to eat the chocolate, like, because it's just how your brain works.
Yeah.
Like, and it's hard to get yourself out of that. And I feel like once you are out of that, it's a lot easier, and once you change your habits, but habits are like hard to break.
Change. Do you think it's the same thing like buying junk food, which is purely a thing that hurts you, is the same as buying an egg product or a dairy product that also has...
No, I just meant it as in like, objectively I know I shouldn't be eating it. It doesn't stop me from wanting to eat it.
Yeah. There's a drive. Do you think that you can be against animal abuse and pay for animal products?
Don't know. Like, I feel like it's a reductive answer to say yes. I mean, to say, like, the answer should be no. But I wouldn't sit here and say, like, I feel like it's, like, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, I obviously support animal abuse.
It sounds to me like maybe like the answer that we want to head towards is like, it is kind of hypocritical, but then we're all, not because we're bad people, because good people do bad things, but because we've all been sold this narrative of this is fine. And then when we really think about it, we realize that we're contributing to animal abuse, And that's one of the main reasons I want to come out and have conversations with like open-minded people like you, maybe press them on stuff. Because if no one had ever pressed me on these things, I wouldn't be out here doing these interviews. You know what I mean? I know I asked you earlier if you'd ever consider veganism, but now having gone this far in the conversation, does that answer change at all?
Yeah, I think I've always wanted to. It's always something I've considered, and it's always like as I said, once I move out and I have control of my own dinner and all that, then it is definitely 100%. I would be something like looking to do.
You know, a lot of times you talk about reducing the amount that we consume. Like, I'm going to reduce the amount of meat. If we relate veganism to the other social justice movements like feminism, for example, do you think it's a fair analogy to say that, you know what, I'm going to reduce my meat consumption, so I'm only going to be responsible for killing an animal once a week? Is that the same as saying I'm only going to hit my wife once a week instead of every day, and that's good enough? Do you think that's a fair comparison to make?
No. I don't think so. I think that I don't want to be like, oh, well, humans are more important than animals and blah blah, and they deserve more, because I don't want to go that far. But if you had a human and an animal in front of you and you had to kill one of them, I'm sure majority of people would say they would save the human. I think that maybe we will get to a point where that is a same analogy, but I think if you went back to when the feminist movement began, they didn't want change overnight, and as sad as it is, they would have been happy, and they were happy with the gradual change that happened, and that's just the way that things do. And I think that saying that people who are trying to reduce their meat intake, saying, well, that's not good enough, only goes against the movement, because it's just going to discourage people and say, well, if that's not good enough, I'm not going to bother. Yeah. I'm trying to do something good here, and if it's still not good enough, then what's the point? And I think people that are trying to reduce their meat intake, they're doing it from a good place, and they do have good intentions, and I think that should be encouraged, and those intentions and that mindset should be encouraged.
And by the way, onto your first point about, I also think humans are worth more than animals. Just because I kicked a dog and you would try to stop me from kicking the dog, that doesn't mean you think dogs are the same as humans. You just think dogs don't deserve to be kicked, you know? Would you agree that, in the same vein that, yes, maybe we can do gradual shifts as a species, in the same way we wouldn't accept the end goal to be, I beat my wife once a week. Do you think we would also not accept, well, I just kill animals because I want to for the taste of it once a week?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we get to that point as a society, and I think it's one of those things that's not going to change overnight, but I do hope that it gets there, and I feel like the perspectives are changing, and the information is more readily available, and people know kind of what goes on behind the scenes, and hopefully they're all signs that things are changing and will change, and we will get to that same point that feminism and racism and all that stuff has gotten to.
Yeah. And speciesism, that's what we call it when we love dogs, but we cut everyone else's heads off. Anyways, Ashley, thank you so much for the interview.